when there are people out there who don't do emotions, you're going to notice. Okay, so I'm going to read to you a compose and then I'm going to follow. You can tune in if you are a person who likes to do emotions, personal development, self help. You're good with a 5D mystic in the enlightenment soul age group, functional adult. So I like to use comparisons of one, I'm a woo-woo for those who don't believe in mysticism, and I do have Reiki practitioner in my back pocket, Akashic record reader, tarot card reader, and those are all aspects that anybody who is not of what I consider not only true spirituality but also of true faith. I grew up with faith and I learned about love from God and Jesus. Okay, but in the way of a solo self who lives a life of meaning and connection beyond just me, the human being. And that's because I have secure attachment, and that's because I have compersion, and that's because I have a twin, and I already got to be polyamory even before I even knew it, because loving more than one person in a non-conventional friendship way is meaning not unfaithful. It's consensual non-monogamy. But what I'm trying to get to is I shared my primary caregiver with another human being and loved both equally in the absence of feeling inadequate, so no shame, or fearing inadequacy. Why? Because the caregiver, called mother, made sure to give me a third of attunement and then repairing ruptures. What does that mean? I'm attachment trauma informed, FYI. It means that when she would not feed me, but feed my twin, she'd eventually feed me. Because it was consistently given, I got to grow up with a whole coherent self. So I know my name, Maria. I feel my name. Okay, this is very important because feeling is what we're talking about. I have emotional depth, and anybody who joins IHP will be on a journey of emotional depth with mental depth. That means that you want to make it easy to think from your left and feel from your right. If you don't, it's okay. There's people like Zen masters who tell you you got laundry. There's others who tell you that the polyamory community overestimate the usage of a human being's brain. There are those who tell you that there's a lack of imagination for evil, which makes me think of there's a lack of education for evil, and evil in the philosophical religious sense is not actually in any way, shape, or form factual. No, what's factual is that there's not an inherently good or evil person when you understand how the first year of your life makes a big difference in your solo self, your relational self, your core self, your narrative self, and your self. Use that, please. Self has a name, but you don't come with only a name. No, actually, the first year of your life, you come with no words. Your right mode is the only part of your brain online, which is why your embodied brain, your attachment system, is going to learn that it's safe to be you and it's safe to have relationships or not. The minute you don't have safety, and even yelling for a football team in the room with a 1-year-old is going to scare the bejesus out of a infant. And in my disorganized attachment and DID course with Daniel Siegel, he shares how him and his colleagues and all the attachment and researchers of mental health have shared numerous times with courts, and I forget how it went down, but he says you cannot state that parents are the, how did he put it? He said disorganized attachment is not because the parent is physically abusing, emotionally abusing, or neglecting. It's not due to childhood developmental trauma, which is the groups of people who have developmental childhood stuff that happens because of emotional neglect. That means there's a person who has no body. It's like being in a dark room and it's an infant who's scared. I find it hard to believe. Well, I find it hard to believe that I have to. So I'm done probably explaining all this. But attachment trauma, education, lack of education is what has people saying sentences like lack of imagination for evil. Evil is not something that exists except for in the term of our past philosophical religious texts, and smart people know of the forensic criminologist Michael Stone, neuroscientist, also Patrick McNamara, Daniel Siegel, Bezel van der Kolk, and any of those great informative human beings who are continuing to do research and study and come together and say human beings, our birthright is secure attachment. You see it right here. Also, thank you, Gabor Mate. He shares how a child's supposed to be lovingly accepted, not have to work for love, allowed the freedom to express all basic human emotions, fear, anger, love. No, wait, fear, anger, sadness, because love isn't. Love is your biochemistry, is the oxytocin gene hormone when you're in a secure attachment. Sadness about connection, anger about correction, fear for certainty. Then we have surprise, and that I'm going to say it's like when you're startled for survival. They all served our survival in the jungle, and still some obviously. Disgust, though we don't eat yucky berries. And then there's happiness. Okay, so you can be in those 6 basic emotions and notice that you have a good mastery or good awareness, while you can also have an emotional disconnect, which happens to the avoidant. So for them, and the ambivalent is revved up. So the avoidant goes offline and closes up because they actually had to shut down the emotional body. They can get it back online, but that means they're going to have to look at all of the emotions, which means they're returning to an infancy. Okay, so long story short, though, disorganized, they are a confused, fragmented sense of self. Fragmented, because the ambivalent has confusion, because the ambivalent actually gets preoccupied, and these are categories, not styles, 2 different groups of researchers. Okay, so long story short, if you didn't have the capacity to enjoy a child-centric first year of life, second, third, fourth, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, all the way to 16, those are your child parts. Okay, so your inner child, here at IHP, we get to be the inner child adult. Your emotional plane, you want to do it. If you don't, there's a Zen master out there for you. You can go and continue living what is a modulated embodied self-life. And some people, they have adaptive and maladaptive child behaviors, which are those perpetuating cycles of transgenerational and cultural trauma. And yeah, we have mantles of mental health, mantles of yoga, and mantles of spirituality. Anybody who's basically not, in my book, believing in humanity. So if somebody says, I'm immune to a narcissist, they're a mantle of mental health. Yoga is perfect, mantle of yoga. Spirituality, it's only if you're in nature, mantle again. Okay, so true spirituality, life of meaning and connection beyond the solo self, knowing you have a subjective experience, perspective, and self-agency, and so do I. So you have an opinion, and I do too, and neither are right or wrong. Called being emotionally, mentally a grown-up, and knowing that our emotions and thoughts, our beliefs, and anything are not irrefutable facts. Now, facts, data, is used in a very specific way, and really the people who use it, you'll notice that they have conversations, not making kind of, I don't even know. So anyways, I gave you a little intro. Let me read this compose that I wanted to share. Okay, when people do not explore their emotional plane, so they don't get to their 0-1-year-old, 2-year-old, or 3-year-old, okay? Their 1-year-old and 3-year-old is not owned by the grown-up, so they don't integrate their brain, means they don't learn to harness their thoughts, emotions, and to become their whole safe haven, secure base, which anyone who's in the solo secure, as a secure attachment polyamory person, you will know. So you'll know how to regulate your nervous system, safe haven, and you'll know how to use your 24 hours secure base, and you'll know what pleasures you, not touching. No, you don't need touching, actually. FYI, orgasms, all it is cerebral, so there you go. There's a great lady out there, by the way. She's a therapist, and she's continuing to look into it. And she does share also the note of, for the different spectrums, there's not enough studies that show a lot of things that I'm sure in time we'll notice. But for sure, a body with a secure attachment person will not want you to come near them with any kind of weapon, any kind of whoop, anything. No, none of that. I'm just going to state it right now, because here's the part about when people are using their platform and their bunches of certificates. Yes, what I've noticed is the ones who are not their inner child adults seem to think that Pinocchio with ears and a tail on the island with the donkeys, with wood, yes, they seem to want to continue that. And so while some groups, again, they use words like Luciferian era, no, I don't have imagination for evil. I have education, and it's not evil. And when it comes to the sexual preferences of anything, I'm thinking 0-1-year-old, attachment trauma, re-traumatization, default mode network, Yes, as long as you're not the owner of yours and you're scanning self and others in the absence of you being Jacob, so objective, then I'm going to know that there's a 0 1 year old that is not being tended to. So I'm stating and sharing how my analysis of if you are a 0 1 year old who's whole, you will say, stay away from me with any kind of weapon that you may think. If you are a person who has not reworked your own attachment category, not styles. Okay, so it's a very specific journey to get home to that 0 1 year old. For anyone who does have childhood developmental trauma, childhood trauma, they are different, but at the same time, it doesn't matter what the difference is. All of those that I've learned from, it's all healable, workable with the motivated emotional and mental participation of the human being who owns the body. So while some are trying to have, when teenagers gathered together, right? Anybody? I was a teenager. I remember in my school, we had a bunch of them that wanted to play hooky. And so every now and then we'd have some stupid person, because see, I love learning. So to me, anybody who doesn't love learning is stupid. I'm not smart, but I'm not stupid, meaning life is made of life and people, not of pseudo aliveness. And pseudo aliveness is when your default mode network is actually still scanning self and other with a 0 1 year old who's freaking out inside. And in the meantime, I get to look at faces of people who have gazillion degrees go into dorsal, vagal, and sympathetic, up and down, up and down. And I'm like, where's the education that you're learning? Are you not applying it to yourself? How do you not notice your body? I can tell you're offline right now. You're like a little bubble. And it's not a competition. I'm just saying, how is a person who's learning information about being a human not aware of where they're at with their 1 year old? You'd think they'd make use of that knowledge and wisdom, and then they'd embody it and make sure that they're a completely secure, attached, integrated brain, since studies show that's the inner and outer well-being of a person. It's not about perfectionism. It's about caring and knowing. And I looked into all attachment trauma to support people to be their self with personal development, self-help. And then I get to hear that 50%, if not more, of therapists have not only dissociative identity disorder, it's not cured, they also have trauma unresolved from their own childhood, not cured, and we have 7 to 14 charming. Okay, so they're not doing their research inside. They stop. Now they're just a Peter Pan with lost boys, lost girls, lost days, and there's your charming 7 to 14 on the evil scale of Michael Stone, forensic criminologist. They just don't end up in jail, all of them. Some of them do. The 1 to 7, they always end up in jail because they get into trouble for being stupid, like Pinocchio, who gets in trouble because he follows the wrong crowd, which makes me pretty sad because it's all people that I saw a bunch of teens. You know what they do when they grow up and they're not grown-ups yet? But we had each other's back. All of us did, really. I saw a bunch of people not having anyone's back. Actually, I saw so many of those so-called unkind behaviors. I have no excuses for any of them except for they all need good therapy. They all should meet Patrick Tiahan, childhood trauma survivor, healed and healing, I always say, as he shares his biggest regret from his childhood trauma is that it made him unkind. And what I can share with all of my lovely viewers today is I chose kindness and love. Thank you, Jesus. Because when I saw unkindness, I said, I'm not going to treat you the way you're treating me. Why would I do that? That would make me a hypocrite. Why would I not love? You don't know how to love, obviously. I'm going to stand in love. Jesus taught me how. I don't need anything different. God taught me how to be humble. Nothing different. I'm going to choose to hold my belly body and my heart body. Okay, so when you learn things with open ears, your 1 year old is what counts. People re-traumatize and mesh. They do a lot of things. They have a bunch of licenses. They're still on their trauma recovery, and all they've done, though, is find bystanders to follow them, and they have superhero capes, which is where we're going to go with this compose. So their 1 year old and 3 year old is not owned by the grown-up. The 16-year-old is spiting. Some are the supervillains spiting the adult that didn't take care of them. Others, they think they're superheroes. In either cases, they got capes and mantles, which makes me know that they're not healed or grown-ups emotionally. They're not objective in any way, shape, or form. They're distorting based on their own emotional plane, which they're not looking at because there's a pain point leading the way. You're going to notice because, again, they got a superhero cape for every time the laundry comes up. Yeah. Or a squirrel attitude from Cusco Land, or even a Cusco attitude, by the way. And so what we have is a 16-year-old. Your fight response is what leads the way unless you become your integrated brain and your grown-up version, which is what you can come on over here and do with the inner growth mindset. And so that fight response and spiting and or being superheroes or supervillains all together, modulated embodied self like Braveheart standing all around as what they are leading with. And those are 714 charming, the silverbacks for people who need a culty cult leader, ethical cult leader, and traditional cult leader. I also remind you that's pseudo-aliveness. Their body is not in any way, shape, or form yet in a restorative embodiment, which is where you will feel that oxytocin gene hormone of love, and you'll feel at ease. And it's not boring to be securely attached. That's why I said, don't come near me with any of your sympathetic stuff, nervous system. I'm going to feel it. I got a friend of mine, his 0-1-year-old, every time he's agitated and excited, I'm like, look, you need to step back. You need to move farther away. This is how far. Arm's length, because my nervous system is reminded of my panic attacks when you're near me like this. I need you to step away. Calm down, breathe, do something, get out of your sympathetic. And then once that happens, we settle in and he can move a little bit closer because and he's a 0-1-year-old. His energy is a little excited 0-1-year-old, which is actually quite cute. I mean, for me. For him, I don't know. He just thinks he's badass, and I'm like, yeah, you're not. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. The bigger they are, the bigger the talk. Yeah, you can tell a movement. The same way a person is going to be noticeable with the sympathetic, like I was describing, so will their little steps backwards when things come about that you do notice they're getting called to help and they completely shy away from it. Body language, like mine will move too. And when people point it out, I don't get defensive. I'm like, you know what? You're right. That is what my body's doing because it's okay. It's okay, Maria, to be afraid. I don't like what you're telling me right now, so I'm protecting myself. It's okay if you look at me and see fear. I'm not, luckily, in the medieval times anymore, so I don't have to be that concerned with what's going on out there. Okay, so again, the 7-14 charming, they're the silverbacks for those who want them, and I like to also call them the Peter Pan. So like that 14-month-old study that Daniel presents to me where the child chooses, basically, at 14 months, he's nicer, or she or they, to the bear that likes the same cereal that they like. While to the bear that doesn't like the same cereal, the 14-month-old will be hostile towards and not want to play with as much. And that is that in and out group. But a 14-month-old is not conscious. It's only normal, I'm going to use that word, for your sensations to prevail. Not to mention that as a 1-year-old, 3-year-old myself, I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to be around someone I don't feel comfortable with. My nervous system is like, no, I don't want that. And if I like something, I know that that means we're going to like things together. So, of course, I want to share more interests because we have interests, okay? So, to me, it can be flexible, adaptive, coherent, energized, stable. And though, I'm not going to treat the one who doesn't like the same things with hostility or difference. That doesn't make sense. That's a dislike that is unnecessary. So, hostility is unnecessary. I can be neutral to an individual who has a different subjective experience, perspective, and agency, meaning that they have different tastes. Treating physically is always the same. We respect each other's physical spaces. Emotions, you can't respect those. Emotions are what you take into consideration when you have enough capacity to use your thoughts and your emotions and know that neither are facts, so that you don't need to use a hostile tone with someone who's talking about things in a way you don't like, for example. Okay, so on the other hand, what we have when we have Peter Pan, we got the Lost Boys, the Pinocchios with the wooden bodies, with the ears and a tail on an island, and the Cuscos, and that's called projection. Every low self-esteem and direct communicator, passive-aggressive, who has unhealthy boundaries, they don't know, yeah. They actually are maladaptive in a shame cycle, and their pattern is completely full of grown-ups who are love dependence and love avoidance, by the way. And let me finish up here. So their shame cycle journey gets to keep them going, and they're on pedestals because the inner child of every person who doesn't grow up, the lost boy, they're superheroes, remember, with capes? So they all stand like Braveheart together. And the people who are adaptive children, they all maintain what is called rigidity and chaos. And they maintain this idea of perfectionism and unforgivability. So all together with Braveheart leading the way, but they're not Braveheart. They're all Pinocchios with ears and tails, if you ask a person like me, and they're Cuscos, and they're also squirrels. They're the love dependence, love avoidance. They don't know love yet. They have codependent, martyrs, superiors, blamers. They got a mantle. They got a mantle. As long as they have a mantle and they're, that to me is going to be an indication of modulated, embodied self individuals who have not completed their healing. They're on their fourth step, but they're using their trauma charges together. And then they are saying the world needs to be the way we want it to be based on our beliefs, our thoughts, our emotions and thoughts are all factual because these are the ancient textbooks with Wendy that we're going to present to you. And that's why their distortion is completely, again, not something we'll be like, huh? We'll be like, no, but okay. No, but okay. Yeah, you know what? I'm not putting you on a pedestal, Zen master with laundry. You, why he won't call you back? Nope. How to keep a man? You're not on a pedestal for me. I do notice the ones who do find you humorous. So I know that you're the spokesperson, Peter Pan. And I'm pretty sure I know who your Wendy's are because the Wendy's are, going to be somewhere along the lines of you've created Wendy, if you will, but to make a mother that you didn't have, which is where we go back to the one secure attachment figure that is not what a Peter Pan will have had. Why does Peter Pan leave the home? Anybody remember? Even though it's really not something, it's even worse than that. And I'm not laughing because it's funny. That's the part. It's not funny. He leaves, it shows in Hook, because his parents start to tell this other human being everything that this kid needs to grow up to be. Everything. Okay, so that's only part of what we can see out there in the world with people who don't know how to go and navigate the emotional depth of themselves. They have an inner critic and outer critic, and they walk around like Pinocchio with ears and tails with an inner shame cycle that can be healed. The secure attachment is a very basic. Then we have the ones who have a deeper, and what I can share with you is they're the ones who are healing, and they will tell you how amazing it is to feel empathy, to be able and have healthy relationships. And that's what we're going to talk about next. So when you meet people who do say, you know what, I'm going to claim my inner child because I can, because it's 2024 and I know what humanity is made of. We're made of heart. We're made of mind. We're made of an embodied brain. The facts are attachment system, unless you want to create some fictitious, or better said, unless you want to only base your mental health information on the past, because that's what some people do. But if you include attachment, neuroscience, neurobiology, if you include new piece of information and get out of only Jungian or Freudian or whatever it is, because I've met people that I have ways to contest. Yeah, I was like, wow. So we'll end with this person with his lovely girlfriend. They were prancing around like I see the quote unquote power couples. You can always tell when it's not a power couple if you're a power person. Any empowered woman, man, we don't keep people around. We enjoy people. It's called healthy self-worth. It's called I am not afraid of being inadequate. It's called here. It's called moving out of being a teenager. I'm going to say, I'm an empowered woman who has self-confidence. I saw teenagers do stupid shit. I grew up, got busy. Now I know that stupid shit is unfortunately trauma. So I have a lot of compassion. For the ones who are doing the work, we're here for them. Ones who want to talk to me like a Pinocchio with a body and an ears, I'm just going to say, well, that was fascinating. Thank you so much. I'm going to see you later because I have a herd, right? So we hang out with a herd. Who's the herd? A herd of expanding consciousness people, not the ones who are, I find it hard to believe that anything from my past has anything to do with my present in 2024 with all this great free information online. Okay, so on that note, whatever I was going to try and get to, I won't. I'm going to close it out. Like, share, subscribe. Thank you for stopping by, and we'll be back with more.